Do you ever give 100% to something and then still have it end in disaster? Yeah, same. Well, for this episode, we're throwing it back to March of my senior year when I got my little people-pleasing heart stomped on by the very mentors that I spent 4 years of high school trying to impress. To give you some context, I was student government president of my high school. I was coming in early, staying late, painting hallways, and running social media accounts, trying to do the best that I could to improve our school. Yet I was banned from saying the pledge at graduation, a privilege that every student government president before and after me had been given without a second thought, for making a joke, some would say pulling a prank about pickleball. Make it make sense. Well, it doesn't, which is why we're talking about it today. All I know is come graduation day, I'm SGA president, I'm excited, dressed, ready, and eager to go, and I get up to say the pledge, my one moment, my seat's missing from the front row, where it's supposed to be located with the rest of the class council members, which means I'm not getting my diploma first, nor will I be making a short walk back to the front row after I say the pledge, but rather I'll be doing the walk of shame to the back row where my last name letter is located, which is humbling to say the least, but heartbreaking to say the most. So let's get into it and let's talk about how my high school made an enemy out of their golden girl the last month of my senior year of high school. Welcome back to the Frankly Flowers podcast, where we keep it real, we're very honest, we spill the tea, and occasionally we expose a high school or two. So let's talk about my high school. Okay, so before we get into this episode, I feel like I obviously need to make a few disclaimers, starting with the fact that all of the names in this story have been altered, and I will not be using any real names or identities. So if you know, you know, I guess, but I will not be dropping any names because the point of this is not to expose individuals and to hate on them. It's really just to expose a flawed system and how it failed me. Additionally, I also wanted to say that everything I'm saying is a true story. I'm simply just telling my experiences and my stories from how I experienced them, and none of this is made up, none of this is false or exaggerated. I mean, well, it's probably a little exaggerated because I'm dramatic, but none of it is going to be falsified or dramified to make them seem bad or to shed bad light on any individuals or any person. It's really just that 3 years later, I still feel wronged by this. And honestly, having a podcast, what other reason do I have other than to share stories like this and to, I don't know, maybe relate to someone out there who also got blackballed by their high school at the end of senior year? You never know. So I wanted to share this story for me because I think, one, it's crazy, like when I tell you all these details and how they play out. And two, I also just think it's really a story that has a lot of underlying meaning when it comes to power plays, when it comes to people in positions of power and how they may manipulate and abuse because of that power. And I also think that high school politics is a big part of this story. And looking past my institution and my individuals I'm talking about, but really the bigger issue at hand is that sometimes students get taken advantage of because they're in a position where they can't fight back against administration or unfair rules and policies put against them. And so I really just want to make this to, one, raise awareness, two, because I want to talk my shit, and three, because this is a story I never got to tell because I was one of those students in a position of where I couldn't do anything, and I basically was manipulated and pushed into doing whatever I was told. So now that I have a voice and I have a platform, I think it would be wrong not to use it. So yeah, all the names are changed. I will be saying Park Vista because ChatGPT and my lawyer mother said that's fine, as long as I tell you that everything I'm saying is true story here. And my family can attest because they were here listening to these stories when they actually happened. So anyways, let's get into the pod, but I just wanted to throw that out there. No good story is complete without context, so I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background. If you watched episode 1, you know the type of personality I have. I'm very type A, very overachiever, but in high school I was like times 100. So I'm just going to give you a quick list. I'm not going to be annoying, quick 30 seconds, but give you a little rundown of what I had going on in high school. I was in the National Honor Society. I was on the board of the National Honor Society my senior year. I was in student government I was 3 out of 4 years of high school, and I was in class council all 4 years of high school. I held 2 positions in class council. I held president in student government, and I was parliamentarian. I was parliamentarian of Palm Beach County, like the actual county. I also played 4 varsity sports by the time I graduated and 8 sports total. I played flag football. I was 4-year cheerleader. I did clubs. I did scholarship pageants outside of school. I was a A B student. So let's just say I was a good student. I never had a run-in with the administration. I never had detention. I never had a tardy. Nothing. They knew me on a first name basis for good reasons because I was always helping out, but no one had ever had an issue with me ever in school. And I was always known as like a good kid, very well behaved, a little loud, maybe a little annoying, but no one ever had an issue with my actual behavior or my ability to follow through on things, to show up, to complete tasks. And just, all that to say, if there was a varsity letter for school spirit, I had it. If there was like a team for school spirit, I would have been on it. MVP, captain, whatever you want to say. Like, I was in there like crazy, and I made high school like a movie for myself because I wanted to experience everything and try it all. And many times people told me like, why are you doing everything? And I don't regret it for a minute, but I also learned a lot. Basically, I was super overachiever, and my first 2 years of high school were freshman year was cut off by COVID, and then sophomore year was completely online because of COVID. And our principal at the time is an OG. He's a king. We're going to call him the King OG Serpent because that's what he is. Our mascot's the Cobra, by the way, for context, but he's the King OG Serpent. We all love him. He's great. He kept a super good spirit and culture at the school. He guided us through COVID great, and all the parents had nothing but good things to say. He was actually the principal when my brother went here too, and my parents loved him, even though my brother did not have the same type A overachiever personality as me, and my parents met him for other reasons. He and my parents got along really well, and they loved him, so he was the king, King OG Serpent. And I'm telling you this for context because when the King OG Serpent left, we had a new principal come in. And that new principal plays a lot into this story because I think he's a big part of what happened and a big part of why a lot of the administration that was at my high school has now moved to a different school. There's a lot of underlying things there, but really all that to say, we love the King OG Serpent, but the principal in play during my story, we're going to call Mr. Clean. He should be Dr. Clean if we're being politically correct, but not sure how he earned the doctorate, so we're going to stick with Mr. Clean for today, but, feel free to talk about it in the comments. Now, this shift of power at my high school is very important because this happened my last years of high school, and there was definitely a shift in the atmosphere as well as a shift in the power. All the staff was much more uptight. They were much less excited to come to work. There were less fun activities and exciting things to look forward to at school. School became a lot more like a prison. I mean, by the time my boyfriend graduated, of course, I know part of this was safety, but we literally had metal detectors before you could even go into school. They had banned most of the fun pep rally stuff, and it was just really mundane, and kids didn't want to go anymore because our first 2 years, the King OG Serpent made high school feel like High School Musical, where we were constantly having pep rallies and fun events and doing like class wars in the middle of the courtyard during lunch and all these fun things that made school more fun because you weren't just going to class. You were going to hang out with friends and make relationships and be a part of a community. I would say that Park Vista had a really, really strong community when the King Serpent was in power. And I think we lost touch with that with Mr. Clean because of just the stricter limitations. I think, to be fair, he came from a school that needed a lot stricter boundaries than us. So when he came in hard, and it was not received well, I'd say. I would say it was received really poorly, actually, by all staff and students. And I had teachers like personally tell me that they did not vibe with Mr. Clean, that they were going to the new school because they didn't like Mr. Clean, etc., etc. But all that just to say, the school culture shifted, and more people than just me were not satisfied. Yet everyone felt they couldn't speak up because Mr. Clean's the principal, which is the top of the food chain, and therefore everyone's below him. So they didn't really feel like they could speak up. Rather, they just felt they were going to leave and go teach somewhere else, which I respect and I understand, but it really ended up screwing me in this story because their mindset was, we're getting out of here, it's not our problem, rather than this is a student who's worked hard for so many years and she deserves a chance, Instead of that, they kind of just were like, yeah, not my problem, I'm out of here, sorry. And that is specifically the student government teacher, Little Miss Sunshine is what we're going to call her. Little Miss Sunshine didn't help me at all, even though I had dedicated literally 3 years of my life to just being student government everything. And I went to hour-long homecoming setups and cleanups and all these things. But Little Miss Sunshine's mindset was like, I'm leaving, so I don't care, and you're not my problem, which I get, but I don't respect. So let's get into the story. All right, now let's talk about the Park Vista prank of the century. The prank of all pranks, apparently, because you would have thought based on what I'm about to tell you. So, first, I'm going to set the scene. We are getting ready for pep rally. It's pep rally day, March 16th, 2023. The worst day of my high school experience, by the way, in case you're wondering. We are setting up the gym for the pep rally. All of student government's there. Some yearbook kids are there taking pictures. The poor kids who have gym class are sitting there watching us, miserable to be there. All of the admin is in there, and there's like some random boys in there who had played football, and the coach wrote them a pass because it was our senior pep rally and he wanted them to have a good day. So he told them, you can just go hang out in the gym, skip class today, enjoy it. It's a pep rally day. It's a half day anyways. So they came and hung out in the gym. And so it was just us setting up and the boys, and I was getting ready for the pep rally. Everything was going smoothly, but I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off because I was supposed to be in charge of everything. And during each pep rally, we have one in the fall and one in the spring. We call out the names of the captains of the sports teams just to give them a little recognition. Usually it's seniors, their last year. They've dedicated 4 years to the sport. And we just want to give them a little recognition, especially if that team did well that year. So as student government president, one of my jobs is to MC every pep rally. So I was MCing and I was calling out the names of the sports captains for that year. So I'm getting ready to go practice and make sure I know the names of everybody and what sport they're in and all that, and get everyone lined up to practice for the captains of the sports teams. And I get called over by a girl. We're going to call her Country Club Barbie. Country Club Barbie calls me over and she's like, "You're missing people on the list." And I was like, "What? What do you mean? Who am I missing?" And she's like, "You're missing the pickleball captains." And I was like, huh? I'd never heard of pickleball at this point, which makes it really funny. Me and my mom were talking about the other day because now pickleball is huge and me and my boyfriend play all the time. But at the time, it was an old people sport. And so we thought it was funny because pickleball is an old people sport to like say they were captains of it. But I wasn't even in on it at this point. We'll get to that. Anyways, so she calls me over, says that I forgot to put the pickleball captains on there. It was a misprint, and that Little Miss Sunshine, the SJ teacher, told her to tell me. And I was like, okay, like who are they? Who are these captains that I'm missing? And then she tells me the names. They're two of those football boys who had been sitting in there all day. We're going to call them JD and Gibby. JD and Gibby. And I looked at her, I'm like, huh, LOL. I laughed in her face. I'm like, yeah, right. I'm sure JD and Gibby founded a pickleball team. Like, no, they didn't. And then she looks at me dead serious and she's like, no, they did. And I mean, she was pretty convincing for a second. I'm not going to say I fully believed her, but I was like, okay, maybe they did. Like, I'll let it sit for a second. So I just moved on and let her be. And then like 20 minutes later, her, JD, and Gibby come up to me and they're like, okay, so did you add us to the list for pickleball captains? And I was like, guys, I'm not doing that. We're going to get in trouble. That's stupid. And then after some back and forth, they kind of told me, listen, it's a joke. It's not that big of a deal. It's our last pep rally. Be real. And I thought about it and I was like, you know what? It is our last pep rally. It is funny. And whatever, we'll just do it in the first pep rally. You guys can go last. I'll just call out you guys as pickleball captains. And what they do when they call it the captains, they run across the court, they do a little handshake or like fist bump in the middle. The cheer girls will do flips or whatever, and then they keep running across the gym and people cheer for them. And that's like all it is. So I told them they go last. We practice, everything goes good. Obviously they don't go at the practice, which that probably should have been my sign not to do it, because the fact that we were hiding it from administration by not doing it at practice, because we knew they would say we couldn't do it. But at the same time, we also still thought this was a harmless joke, and we were like, oh, let's prank them when there's like, let's make the joke when there's people around. It's not funny if we make the joke and there's no one watching. You know what I'm saying? So obviously for comedic effect, we had to wait, but at the same time, that should have been my sign not to do it. To be fair, the frontal lobe wasn't fully developed. It's still not, but it's more developed now. So I wouldn't do it again, especially based on the outcome. But we basically just decided not to do it until the first pep rally. So first pep rally comes and goes and we get ready to go. I call them out as pickleball captains. They run across. I think they like did a chest bump and like, I don't know, pecked each other on the cheek. I don't know. They just ran across and did something goofy. It wasn't that big of a deal. And then they kept running and that was the end of it. We went on with the pep rally. I'm on the cheer team, so I had to do the cheer routine, blah, blah, blah. And I thought all was good. I was like, all right, that was kind of funny. No one really noticed, so I guess it wasn't that funny, but whatever. It's over now. So we move on. And right before the second pep rally starts, the athletic director, who we're just going to call AD, athletic director because I don't have a nickname. The athletic director comes up to me and says, hey, Mr. Clean is really upset about that prank you pulled. And I looked at her like for a second and I asked what she was talking about because I didn't even know what prank she was talking about. And so I was like, what are you talking about? And she said, the pickleball thing, that wasn't funny. Dr. Clean, Mr. Clean, Dr. Clean, Mr. Clean is in his office. He's very upset and he's talking about giving you all referrals, this is not. And she starts like rambling off, telling me all these things, how he's so upset and like he yelled at her and she's so disappointed and like, why did I do that? This is not. And so I felt terrible, obviously, because I thought it was a joke and I didn't think he was going to react like that, let alone take it out on her. And so I felt bad for being the cause of it, of course. So I apologized to her and then I just started crying because I was thinking, one, I've never been in trouble before. Like, what did I just do? What did they just talk me into? And two, I had to go MC the next pep rally. So I'm like, not only did they just tell me all these threats, they said I was going to be currently, I don't know the word, so I'm just going to say currently dethroned as SJ president because I can't think of the word right now, but let's just say I was going to be dethroned temporarily and the vice president was going to take my spot. There's definitely a better word for it, but we're going to go with dethroned. So they said they were taking away my position and that I was going to probably get a referral, which I was scared because I'm an FSU student now. Go Noles. But at the time, I was on the waiting list and I was scared that if I got a referral, that would affect my admissions. And it was really important to me that I went to college because, as I read to you earlier, I'd done a lot of work to get to college at this point and to do the most in high school so that I could make it into a good school. So I was just crying, thinking like my future's ruined over this joke and I've never been in trouble. And of course, it's the last part of senior year and this and that. Everything's running through my head. Country Club Barbie steps up. She said, you know what, let me go talk to the athletic director. Goes over, tells her like, hey, it wasn't just Maddie. Also, you know, she's waiting on her FSU decision. Like, let's not ruin her life over this. And the athletic director agrees. And she's like, you know what, you're right. We won't give her a referral, but Mr. Clean is still very angry and he's still going to have retribution. So I was told that I was going to have a meeting with him and all the boys, including JD and Gibby, and then all the other boys who were in the auditorium. I guess not all of them had passes to skip. So the other ones, after that whole, like, I guess the prank, they noticed the other ones who had been in there the whole time and they sent them to in-school suspension with JD and Gibby and the other, like, football boys because of skipping class and the prank. But they didn't send me to in-school suspension for some reason. They let me MC the next pep rally, which I thought was really weird because that would be a great punishment. Don't let me MC the next pep rally. But for some reason, they let teary-eyed me go back out and MC the second pep rally while the other guys were in school suspension. And they told me that we'd have a meeting with Mr. Clean and the athletic director after to talk about our punishment. So I got through the next pep rally, helped with cleanup, and was just trying not to freak out at this point. Little Miss Sunshine basically was just like, yeah, sucks to suck. You're fucked. That was literally her reaction. My student government teacher of 3 years who should have cared didn't give she didn't give one, not even a little one. She didn't give half of one. She just said, sucks to suck, Maddie. Like, I think she was thinking like that's what your attitude gets you, because I think she was really sick of me not letting her bulldoze me at that point, but it is what it is. So she was no help whatsoever, and she was very eager to tell the vice president he was stepping up into my place. Whatever, we got through it, and then I go into the meeting after I'm done cleaning up the pep rally, and I walk into this meeting. There's 8 guys sitting there, like 4 of them are the football boys, the other one skipped class, and then it's me. I just walk in, I'm like in my cheer uniform still, literally so horrified. I wish I had any other clothes, because that was the most humbling moment, is walking into the meeting where they were gonna tell me that I was in trouble for the first time ever wearing a cheer uniform. Like, in front of 8 guys that I didn't know. I was just like, damn, this is awkward. And all these guys, like, not all of them, but half of them had been in trouble before. It wasn't their first time here. My first time here, other than being here for a staff meeting, was this. So it was just a humbling moment in the cheer uniform and all. So I go in, I sit down. It was the last one there. So I just, like, walked in. And they were all sitting there looking at me. I was like, oh, hey, guys, like, didn't know you were here. Also, this is a really funny detail. I have to throw this in there because it's my favorite. So when the guys were on the way from in-school suspension, like the little detention room, to the actual meeting room in the principal's office, they walked in little steps, like they took little tiny steps like penguins, and they walked with their hands like this and like down by their waists, obviously, so that it looked like they were shackled. And they walked in a line, straight line, single file, shackled all the way from the classroom with in-school suspension to the principal's office. And I think he saw them walk in that way because he was livid. I wish I had seen them walk in that way because it probably would have brought some humor to that situation for me, but I missed it and I had to hear about it secondhand. But there's videos of them walking through the entire courtyard, which, mind you, we go to school in Florida, so everyone eats lunch in the courtyard. There's hundreds of underclassmen out there. They're walking in front of all these underclassmen, setting this example by walking like they're shackled. Hilarious. Hilarious. I'm sorry. That's so funny. Wish I had seen it, but I missed that one. So I'm assuming that made tensions a little bit higher going into the meeting, but I'm not 100% sure. So the actual meeting was really nothing notable. It was really quick. The athletic director did most of the talking. Mr. Clean just stood there looking down the road. Sorry, that was mean. He just stood there and like didn't say anything, and then he like nodded and walked out before we had a chance to ask him any questions or anything. And they basically threw out a bunch of open threats saying like, listen, you guys might not be able to go to prom. You might not be able to attend some of the senior ending events. Like, there's nothing else left for you to be punished with. So your senior events are getting at risk. And then they turned to me in this room of like 7 guys, single me out, and are like, Maddie, like, you were the most disappointed in, like, we have higher expectations for you. And then start telling me how obviously I'm going to be dethroned as student government president for the time being, and I will not be doing anything associated, which means saying the pledge of graduation, sitting up front, all that stuff. And they also said that I might not be walking at graduation, depending, because I abused my power or something like that, and that they didn't trust me or something like that. And then they also told me that they were still deciding on the referral, but that they didn't think they were going to do that. And they just threw out like a bunch of open threats, whatever, and essentially just targeted me. And I was like, oh, this is so embarrassing that I'm getting called out in front of all these people. And then, you know what? I will say this is a very good part of the story. JD, if you're watching this, you're probably not, but whoever knows JD and is watching this, tell him he's a king, because he steps in and was like, listen, athletic director, Maddie was not the conspirator in this. Like, she didn't help us think of the idea. She didn't come up with it. She didn't push for it. She actually argued with us. Like, she didn't want to do it. We pushed her into it. Like, please don't punish her like that. It's not fair. Basically, he was just saying, like, it's not fair that I was getting punished so harshly, considering that I wasn't the one behind it. And she essentially just told him, like, sorry, tough luck. Maddie made her choices and she'll deal with them. But I really respect him for that, because he didn't have to do that. And me and him really weren't friends or close or like anything special at the time. And like, for him to step up and put himself at risk and say that he was in charge of it and not to blame me was something I really respect as a person. And I still respect him for that. And I always tell people I will always respect him for that, because everybody else stood there looking at me like I had just robbed a bank, even though they were the ones that talked me into it. So it was just this whole thing. And then the other guys were just trying to save their own asses. And it was a big crap show. So everyone leaves. I start crying again because, again, never got in trouble. I couldn't handle it. And then I talk to the athletic director. She tells me she's really disappointed in me, and then starts telling me that these guys aren't my friends and that I need to know that they're going to drag me down with them, and that I need to be careful who I associate with, and that moving forward, she hopes I learn from this, and that I know that these guys are only going to bring me down. Like, she's really just like targeting the guys or whatever. And I was like, okay, like, I get it, but also what? I thought this is about me. Like, why are you blaming me for, like, why are we talking about them? This is about me. And so I went home that day, super upset, ended up crying in bed for like an hour or two, telling all my friends what happened. And then when my parents got home, I was terrified because I've never been in trouble. And so I go downstairs. I'm going to tell them both at the same time. So I waited till my dad got home. I go downstairs. I'm red-eyed and puffy-eyed and teary-eyed and all the things. And I go downstairs. My parents ask what's wrong. Tell them the whole story like I just told you. My mom looks at me and starts laughing and is like, is that it? Where's the rest of it? That's all? That's the whole story? And they just kind of sat there for a second. And then my mom says, like, you should have said they were captains of the Big Balls Club and then taken that punishment with pride. And I was like, you know what, Mom? Right on. I should have, because the fact that I literally got threatened with half my life for calling out these guys, literally saying 6 words, JD and Gibby pickleball captains, those were the words I said with their names. That got me literally threatened so heavily. I got my position taken away, and I was basically told I'm gonna have to fight for the right to party and walk at graduation, even though I've been fighting for the right for the last 3 years. So it was frustrating. My parents were also frustrated, and they basically just told me it's going to blow over. Let's not stress about it. They recommended I write apology letters, which I totally agreed with. So I ended up writing an apology letter to Mr. Clean and the athletic director saying I was sorry for my part in things, that I had no ill intention, and I'm sorry for any inconvenience or stress I caused. They were like 2-page letters. I tried really hard on them, and I hand delivered them the day after break, but Mr. Clean was nowhere to be found. So I put his in his mailbox, and I gave the athletic director hers, and she thanked me and told me that she didn't really agree with how harsh my punishment was either. And so that was kind of my first inkling that maybe this wasn't a fair and just thing that was happening, because I've never been in trouble before, so I don't know. But that was my first inkling of like, like maybe I am being really harshly punished. But at the end of the day, if that was just the punishment they said, like, fine, and they stuck with it, fine. But it's really the politics that come into play that make this story. I think it's safe to say that the only thing more fake than Park Vista's pickleball team was the admin's sense of humor about the whole situation. They truly did not see how it could be a joke or a sense of humor, and fully thought that I was intending to burn the school to the ground with those 6 words. So I feel like that context plays a lot into this story, and you need to know that admin really didn't think it was funny. And I understand that, but I also feel like you got to understand when you work with kids that they do stupid things because they think stupid things are funny. Not that it makes it better, but at least you got to understand the reasoning, because 18-year-old us thought it was hilarious. It was not. It didn't turn out hilarious, but we sure thought it was at the time. And I think that if they had taken into account the fact that there were no ill intentions and we weren't intending to do any harm to any individuals or the school as a whole, then it would have been a lot different. But there were a lot of politics in play. One of those that I haven't mentioned is that Gibby, one of the students I called out as pickleball captain, was also a football player, and he transferred schools earlier in the year to play football for another program that had better recruitment offers, which I don't blame him, as you should. He got an offer and then transferred back to Park Vista to graduate as a Cobra, which I understand. He spent 3 years here. All his best friends are here. He wants to graduate here, but the admin and staff did not understand, and they were very, very upset and had a personal vendetta against him because he and the other kids who left and did the same thing left our football team for dead, I guess, which is not their fault, but we weren't very good my senior year. We barely won a game, if we won one. And it was definitely due to the fact that we lost a bunch of people who were supposed to be senior leader players on the team. But at the same time, that wasn't those kids' fault, nor was it my fault. And so it really was the fact that I was the only one they could control, and I was stuck in this limbo between the personal vendetta they had against him and ruining our football team this year and making us look bad for all the sponsors and people that pay our bills, versus a student who was trying to make a joke and got caught in the middle of it, and I'm the only one that they can control. So I kind of got the short end of the stick in the situation. But it is what it is. It's just something that I know for a fact played into it, because one, the athletic director said it to me multiple times that I shouldn't associate with Gibby, that, Gibby's bad news, this and that. They specifically named him to me. And additionally, I had a meeting with Mr. Clean after he gave me a to-do list in order to walk at graduation, which we'll get into. But I had a meeting with him, and he basically said to me, like, you're in trouble because you associated with Gibby, and I think he's bad news, and you're better than that, and this is what happens when you associate with kids like that. Basically saying that this is what happens for me giving them a chance to have a moment in the spotlight, I guess, because they would have been called out as football captains if they hadn't transferred, but because they did, they never got that chance. And so I think the admin was mad that they still got the opportunity to be recognized as captains in front of the school, which I think is stupid, because who cares? There's 18-year-old kids, but that also is not my fight to fight, and I don't agree with it, so it is what it is. Let's talk about the aftermath. So I told you I wrote and delivered those handwritten letters to the athletic director and Mr. Clean, and the athletic director thanked me. She responded. I never heard anything from Mr. Clean, but about a week after I gave those, I was called into his office, and when no one was there, his secretary then called me in and said that she wanted to talk to me, and said that she knew that I was, trying to prove that I was worthy of being student government president and earn back the right to walk at graduation and say the pledge and all that. And so then she informed me that Mr. Clean thought of the perfect solution, and that basically they were going to put me on a PR campaign for my own survival, to sum it up. But what they actually said was they wanted to look good for student teacher Bring Your Kid to Work Day. So for Bring Your Kid to Work Day, they wanted me to make them look good by making 35 like 2x2 foot posters with every single kid Cummings name on them and like a little individual picture for each kid. And then there was 35 kids to start, which they did end up adding like 7 more after. So it ended up being over 40 posters I had to make, which is fine. I've done that before. I do lots of poster making, but the caveat was that this was kind of like a ultimatum, like do it or you don't walk. Additionally, I was told that I had 5 days to do it, which is not a lot of time to make 40 plus posters, especially when they added those extra later. And I was told by Mr. Clean's secretary, not himself. He didn't speak to me whatsoever and still hadn't spoke to me even since the incident. He never spoke to us in that room during the meeting afterwards, and I had yet to see him. So I go back to student government like classroom, and I'm fuming at this point. I'm a little bit of a hothead, I'm not gonna lie. So I was fuming at this point, and then I said, you know what? This is ridiculous. The fact that he couldn't even tell me himself is ridiculous. But whatever, it's fine. I let it go and I move forward. I start working on these posters. And like a day in, I realized there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. Everyone else is working on homecoming. No one will help me. And I go home. I'm super stressed out. My dad kind of asks what's wrong, and I tell him. And he ends up calling my student government teacher, Little Miss Sunshine, and says, hey, like, I don't understand why she has to do all this and why it was given like an ultimatum. And also, why is no one helping her if it's given like an ultimatum? Shouldn't you guys want her to walk at graduation and be able to do all this? But Little Miss Sunshine essentially told him, like, no worries, I'm going to give her help. People are going to help her. Don't worry. It's not a big deal. No problem. So he figured it would be fine. I figured it would be fine. And I go in the next day. Absolutely no one helps me. By the end of class, I'm fuming again. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go talk to Mr. Clean. I'm like, I need to at least ensure that if I'm going to spend my entire weekend making posters for kids that are going to look at him for 30 seconds and hanging them up and making him look good, that I'm at least going to walk at graduation, because I'm not going to make him look good and waste my time for no reason. So I go into his office and I was super nice. I just said like, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? And he was like, yeah, come in. And I said, okay, I just wanted to talk to you about that project your secretary mentioned. And I want to see, you know, one, it's a lot of work and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it in time. So I just want to see like if it's a hard needs to happen or I don't walk at graduation, or if you just want me to do this to help you out and you can get some more help on it or something. Like what is the situation here? Because I hadn't heard from him yet. And he essentially told me that I needed to do this as a favor to him because he was asking me to. He said, well, you need to do it because I asked you to. And I said, I completely understand that, you know, authority, respect. But if I do this and spend all weekend doing this, am I going to be able to walk at graduation and say the pledge and do the whole thing and be president and not have to stress about it anymore? Because with finals and everything, it's really hard to get all this done and study for finals and get ready to graduate and do all the other things that I needed to do. I was also playing a sport at the time. I don't remember which one, probably lacrosse. I was playing varsity lacrosse at the time. So I was also in the middle of that season and I just didn't have time to do 45 posters alone while going to school 8 hours a day, playing sports, being president, and doing a million other things. So I basically just asked him like, hey, if I stay up all weekend doing this and get it done, which it's not even really humanly possible, but if I do end up getting it done, am I going to be good to go? Like, can I motivate myself by saying I'll be good? And he just said, you know, I need you to do this as a favor to me because I'm asking you to and because that's your job. Like, it's not an if and or situation. I'm not promising anything. And he just kept kind of denying to promise anything, kept pushing me off, and told me, like, again, not to associate with Gibby and that that's my problem and that's why I'm in this situation and that's why I'm in trouble. Mind you, I would like to know all those boys, the only thing that ever happened was they got threatened. They might not be able to go to prom. We all went to prom. It was fine. One of their moms called and complained and he completely changed his mind. They didn't even have to argue about their prom tickets. It was not a big deal. So I was the only one still being punished at this point because they had been let off free. No big deal. Good to go. So he told me I needed to do this as a favor to him and that he wasn't making any promises and that we'd see after it's done, depending on how good I did. And I was just really frustrated by this and confused. So I left and I was over it. And then I finished making the posters. I went in by myself at 6 a.m. and hung them up. And I called it a day and I was like, you know what? It's done. It's fine. It's over. I'm going to move on with my life. And that should be good. He'll tell me I can walk at graduation. I did a great job. I spent hours doing this. And 3 days pass. I hear nothing. Not a thank you. not a good job, not a that'll suffice, nothing. I don't hear anything. So then I ask Little Miss Sunshine. She says, I don't know. It's not my problem. Yeah. Pretty nonchalant. She don't care. It's not her problem. She doesn't give a, like I said. So it's my problem. So I go home and tell my dad, I'm like, I'm not sure if I should go back to his office. He wasn't very nice the last time I went, kept telling me I was doing him favors, was very manipulative about it, made me very uncomfortable, kept like referring to the boys when we were talking and like blaming them and telling me it was my fault for associating with them. And it just wasn't something that I wanted to do again. And I was just confused as to why he hadn't just given me the okay yet, because I had done all this work and gone above and beyond and made 45 posters instead of 35 and had hung them all up by myself at 6 a.m. because no one would help. So at this point, my dad was fed up. It was a week before graduation. I had still heard nothing, and Little Miss Sunshine was no help. So he called her and was like, hey, this is ridiculous. She spent hours of her life, probably days and weeks of her life, dedicated to this school, to the school's social media accounts, to making it better, to going to your staff meetings after hours to make sure you have notes taken, like all these random little things. And he basically called King Jesse, we love him, but he basically called her and was like, listen, this is BS and it's got to be done, because I'm really not sure if you guys are going to wait till the day of graduation to tell her if she can walk or what. And Little Miss Sunshine said she'd let him know. Next day I go into school and I'm told that all is fine, that I am good to go. I have been reinstated as president. I'm walking at graduation. Everything is fine. And that's what I thought, but I was wrong. My other honorable mention for how this grown man was holding a grudge against me was the fact that I didn't receive the Cobra Spirit Award, which I'm not trying to be cocky and say like, oh, I deserved it, but every single SGA president before me and every single one after me has gotten it, because the definition of the award is whoever dedicates the most time and energy to making Park Vista a better place, and whoever represents the embodiment of a true Cobra or whatever. He picked a random guy who really hadn't done much other than show up and dress up as the Cobra a few times. So I'll give him that, but clearly I was the one who should have gotten it, but I didn't, because he was holding a grudge against me for not, one, doing what he wanted, and two, for associating with Gibby, God forbid. But that was a little bit annoying. I let it go. I moved past the award. At the end of the day, I understand why I didn't get it, and I understand why he didn't give it to me. However, the main problem in this story that I have is just the immaturity that continues to play through, and the time and time again that it proves I'm more mature than this grown man. So we were at the senior assembly a week before the actual graduation, and I had still not been told if my PR campaign from hell had done anything for me. So I didn't know if I was saying the pledge of graduation or walking or what I was doing, because nobody had told me yet. So we go to the senior checkout assembly. Everyone has to go. So my entire senior class is there. There's kids I've never seen before. I go to school with like 800 something kids in high school. So some of those kids, when I saw them walk across the stage of graduation, that was the first and probably last time I will ever see those people. But anyways, we were all in the auditorium and he was giving this whole spiel about senior privilege and how we don't want to, in his words, mess around and find out, because some students had already done so this year and were now facing the consequences. And essentially in front of the entire senior class, referenced my little pickleball prank and how I was now facing the consequences because the only things left to lose were senior privileges, like walking at graduation and doing things like that. So in front of the whole school, he essentially called me out because everybody knew what he was referring to, and talked about how some kids had messed around and found out recently and that the only thing left to lose was senior privilege. So don't be like those kids, essentially. And this was a senior assembly where I was supposed to be honored with the other class council members and like introduced to my class, whatever, if they had never met us before. But instead I sat in the middle of the row, so embarrassed, literally just like, wow, I wish I could disappear into the uncomfortable chair right now, because this is the most humbling thing. And I'm so uncomfortable, even though I knew not everybody there knew what he was talking about or knew that it had anything to do with me. I knew. So I was just really uncomfortable, feeling like I had to sit through this assembly where I was being targeted in front of my entire senior class. I also believe I forgot this detail, but I would like to say that assembly was a week before graduation, and I wasn't told I could walk until 3 or 4 days before graduation. And what led to me being told I could walk was that my dad had to call Little Miss Sunshine and essentially tell her that this is getting ridiculous and it's really unfair, and that he's starting to get frustrated and he's about to get involved because I've done everything I can and my parents aren't ones to step up and save me, or to bring me a lunch because I forgot one, or to yell at a teacher because they gave me a bad grade. Like, my parents are very much take responsibility for your own actions type of people. And so for him to step up and be like, hey, I feel like I need to step in because now we have grown adults manipulating my child and it's not fair because she's up against people that are obviously in positions of power and she can't control. So he essentially on the phone said to her, this is getting ridiculous. My daughter is being ultimatum by a grown man and she is being manipulated. She's being pushed into doing things. She hasn't had time to study for her exams. And also just like, what is the point? She did everything you asked her to, and now you still won't tell her if she can walk at graduation. And so he basically told Little Miss Sunshine that if she didn't figure it out in the next day, he was calling every news station in Palm Beach County to come down to Park Vista and do a little interview about basically this golden girl turned black sheep and how I was getting blackballed from graduation while the other peers were facing no punishment. And I think that finally got it through to them. And that's why I think they told me that everything was good and I was good to go and made it seem like there would be no retributions. I think they thought I would do what I did, which is walk away and not look back and move on, because it was really traumatizing and uncomfortable and not something I enjoy thinking about or talking about, because I'm really not proud of myself in that time or proud of how I felt and how I was being talked to. And so I think that the fact that I'm here with this podcast now is just crazy, because I don't think they or I ever saw this coming. But here I am because I didn't get to have any retributions then. So I guess this is your payback, Park Vista. Thanks for ruining my graduation day. Moved on, we get to graduation day and I think all is good. But graduation day is where things really take a turn, because we get there and I'm all dressed and ready. Mind you can't take your phone into graduation because it's just a security thing. We go through metal detectors. So I'm in there, no phone, like 6 a.m. I go to find my seat in the front row. So all the class council, student government president, and valedictorian and salutatorian all sit in the front and get their diploma first. So I go to find my seat and I notice that there's a chair missing. So I ask one of the administrators, one of the assistant principals, and she says, I don't know, actually, Maddie, let me call and ask Little Miss Sunshine, because that is weird. You should have a chair there, because that's where every other SGA's president's at. So she's also confused. She calls Little Miss Sunshine, who comes over, looks at me and goes, yeah, so me and Mr. Clean decided that it would be better if you just walk back to your seat. And I looked at her for a second and was processing, and then I was like, why? And she said, well, just because it makes more sense. And I was like, it actually doesn't make more sense. I'm doing the walk of shame past 18 rows of people, because I go to high school with 800 plus kids in my class and over 3,000 in my school. So I'm doing the walk of shame past 8 rows of people, and then I have to shimmy on into the middle of the row. That makes absolutely no sense, but okay. And then she was like, don't worry, it's all gonna be good. It's final. And basically told me there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That was what was happening. And what was I going to do about it? It was graduation day. Didn't have my phone. Didn't have a voice. I was a student. And what were they going to say? You can't walk at all? I wasn't going to do that to my parents. So I sat there and I did the walk of shame back to my seat after saying the pledge. And the most frustrating part was no one knew that I worked for that. No one knew how embarrassing and humiliating that walk was. No one knew that I wasn't supposed to be sitting in the middle of the back of a random row and getting my diploma with everyone else, because I'd spent so much time and energy making this school a better place. And because of one mistake, one joke, one prank, they didn't think I deserved the right to sit next to the kids who had done half as much as me. Other than salutatorian and valedictorian. They earned their seat. They probably did way more than me. But the other class council kids did half as much as SJ president, and they just got their diploma first and got to sit up front. And they didn't tell me, of course, that I was not going to do that. They gotcha'd me on the day of graduation because they didn't want me and my dad to throw a fit. So that was super upsetting to be backdoored, I guess, by people that I trusted and that I spent so much time trying to impress. It was also heartbreaking because I went into the day thinking it was just going to be a positive day to enjoy, be happy, celebrate my accomplishment, put this whole thing behind me. And instead, I spent the entire graduation holding back tears because I was so embarrassed that I had to walk back to this seat in the middle of a random row. And I know nobody knew. I'm so aware of that. But just in my mind, me knowing that that was something that I did because of a prank and that nobody else, none of those guys were facing any punishments, that it was just me who had to do the walk of shame because of something I got talked into doing, was just so frustrating. And then I didn't give many photos that day because after I got out of graduation, I told my parents what happened and started bawling and wanted to leave because I was so embarrassed that I was even there. I didn't want to see any of the administration, and I didn't want to take pictures with my puffy eyes because I'd been sitting in my random seat crying the rest of graduation. So it was a really crappy memory, and it really is sad to me that I don't get to celebrate and think back on my graduation day as an exciting accomplishment, but rather it's a tainted, kind of bad memory, I'd say, of me getting backdoored and me getting turned away at the last minute with nothing I could do about it, which is so frustrating. I wish I could say that Park Vista admin were the only people that let me down, but the dysfunction ran deep here. And now we're going to talk about a group I'm going to call the Flag Frat. And these were a group of grown men who coached the girls' flag football team, and they had no ties to the school, no correlation. I really don't know where they found these men, to be honest with you. They were very aggressive, not very nice, and they used to practice with us off campus unsupervised, which, let's just start with that. Sorry, but that looks like a liability waiting to happen. You don't know these people other than a basic background check, and maybe one of them someone's dad. So that was the Flag Frat, and we will talk about them because I experienced a lot of things while being on the flag football team for 2 years, both for myself and for others. I think the most impactful thing was when I was on JV my sophomore year, and these two girls were on the freshman team. There was about 12, 15 of them total. There wasn't that many. And every other freshman was told by the coach to come to the JV game and dress up in the JV jersey and stand on the sidelines in case we needed them because our JV team was small at the time. And he called two girls specifically and told them that everybody but them could come and dress out, that they would have to pay for their tickets and sit in the bleachers with all the parents and everybody else and watch because he didn't want them wearing the jersey on the sideline because they weren't good enough. And I remember thinking, like, if that was me, I would be horrified, and I'm horrified for them, but they came to that game and sat in the bleachers the whole time. And I remember pointing it out to my mom, and she was horrified. She could not believe that a coach had told two little girls that they weren't good enough to even wear the jersey and stand on the sidelines. So that's just like the start. That's so sad. And I feel like that just gives you a summary of the kind of coaching we're talking about. They were coaching girls, but they thought they were coaching the NFL Combine. So they were calling plays, yelling out, screaming at the top of their lungs for hours straight and making us run miles at a time as punishments. And they had favorites. They had golden girls, and I was not one of those. I'll just give you a disclaimer. I was not one of them. I'm going to be honest. I wasn't very good at flag football. I don't like balls flying at my face. I'm going to dodge. Who doesn't dodge that? I don't know who sees a ball coming right at their face and thinks, "Oh, let me catch it." No, I think block, okay? So, I think I would be really good if flag football was a game of block, but it's not. So, wasn't really good at catching the ball. Defense, I killed it on defense, but I wasn't great at catching the ball. And I'm going to be honest here, okay? However, at 15, I didn't realize that me being bad was not an excuse for these coaches to call me Butterfingers and scream in my face that this is why I didn't play every single time I dropped a ball. And it wasn't Butterfingers like a cute nickname, like, "Oh my God, Butterfingers, come on, catch the ball." No. This was screaming at the top of their lungs, "Butterfingers, catch the ball or you're never going to play. This is why you sit on the sidelines." And something along those lines. Or, "Hey, Butterfingers, you need some napkins? You need me to help you wash your hands? You got a little butter on there?" Like, it was like a taunting. I would get taunted by these grown men, and they would also like publicly embarrass me by calling me crappy in front of the whole team. And they were very quick to tell us who was there to play and who was there to warm the benches and clap for others. I was a clapper. And they made sure to tell me every single day how bad I sucked. I used to go home crying all the time, which is why I ended up quitting, because it's not fun when you cry all the time at a sport. And I have two specific stories from this team that really stand out to me. The first one is kind of just like messed up, but when I was a sophomore year over summer, it was COVID and stuff, and they were trying to start like a league outside of the school, but with the schoolgirls. So they invited me to come to this tournament, and I went with some of my friends. It was like a 3 or 4 day tournament over the weekend, and we played like 12 games over those days. And they asked me to come. I paid to go. I said, "Yeah, that'll be fun." Like, I was excited to play over the summer. I love the sport. I wasn't that great at it, but I loved it, and I thought it'd be fun. We go. We get our butts handed to us. Okay, we won like 2 games out of 12. So like 2-10 was our record after the end of that weekend. Not to mention, you know how many plays I could count? The amount of plays I played are in this hand right now. I played like 4 plays the entire weekend out of 12 flag football games. Like, I'm assuming, I don't know math, but if I had to guess, there were over 1,000 plays that weekend. I played in 4 of them. And don't get me wrong, I already admitted I was bad. But one, why did they invite 15-year-old me who couldn't drive to come all the way to this tournament 4 hours away and spend this money to stay in a hotel and do all this if they thought I was so bad that I wasn't even going to play? And 2, I know the answer to that. It's even more messed up. Why would they bring a 15-year-old all this way to stand on the sidelines and make it seem like they have a bigger team and not play me at all? Do you know how bad that is for a kid's confidence? Like, do you know how terrible that is for a kid's self-esteem? I cannot imagine, like, a coach doing that, imagine a coach inviting you to a tournament, and then you get there and he's like, yeah, like, you're only going to play the 3 losers. So, like, when there's 3 losers, you're going to play them. He would put me in for, like, the last play of a game we were losing 36-0 to. Oh, yeah, that was the third point. The third point was that we were sucking anyways. It's not like we were playing good. We weren't, like, on a winning streak and they didn't want me to risk it. We were sucking, like, further than sucky. We were so freaking bad, okay? It was embarrassing. So if we're playing so very bad, why won't you let me go play bad, okay? I want to play bad too. I want to go run around in circles and pretend to play. Why don't I get a turn? Like, that's so mean. So I've shared a lot about the flag frat, but there was one incident in specific that made my parents tell me I was done playing, no more, and it was not a discussion because they were so outraged and upset, rightfully so, after what happened at this one game. So it was our last 3 or 4 games of the year, last couple. I was a sophomore in high school on the JV team, and we were playing in Stewart or Jupiter, one of the two. So it was like a 30 to 45 minute drive. My parents both had work. My mom had carpooled kids to every game but this one, and so another parent had stepped up and said they could drive us because we didn't have licenses. So we go to this game, all's well. The last couple plays we're playing, mind you, I'm very scared of these coaches. I'm very intimidated by them. They have the fear factor going on. So I will do whatever it is to make them happy because they constantly tell me how much I suck and how much they don't like me. So obviously my people-pleasing self is trying to make these coaches like me. So I'm finally playing this game. I'm playing as center. I'm snapping the ball. And one play, last couple of the game, I snap the ball, go to stand up and run, and the rusher literally runs straight into my face and knees me in the head. There's photos that the photographer of that game took of me gripping my head and standing there looking confused because I, little did I know, just got a concussion and that rusher kneed me right in the face, running full speed. Apparently she wasn't that fast because she thought she had to run through me to get to the quarterback, but I digress. So I got the concussion. The girl kicked me in the head. There's photos of me standing there visibly gripping my head, like dazed and confused because I just got hit so hard. The coaches start screaming at me, Flowers, what are you doing? Get on the field, focus. Like, they start screaming at me, telling me to lock in, whatever. And then after the play's over, they're like, are you good? Are you good? And I was like, yeah, I'm good. Because I wasn't going to tell them I wasn't good. They were just screaming at me and I'm scared of them. So I said I was good. My parents weren't there, so they didn't see it. Game goes on. I finished playing the game, the last 5 or 6 plays. And then at the end, my head's really hurting, but I figure it's fine. I just need to go home and like sleep it off because I did get hit in the head. So I go to find my ride and our ride fell through. The girl's mom who was supposed to drive us home never came to the game. So instead of our coaches, one, getting me checked out medically at all after getting hit in the head so hard that there's photos of me standing there gripping it, which I'll show in the podcast and post, but they also didn't offer to drive us home, which normally coaches would do that. They would step up and offer to drive kids home if we got stuck in an away game. But the coaches just left without a second thought, didn't worry about us getting home. It wasn't their problem. And then someone's mom ended up driving us home, which was good. When I got home and my parents found out what happened, they were livid and they told me I was done with flag football after we went to MD Now that night and got diagnosed with I don't even know if there's categories for concussions, but it was like a mild concussion. And my parents were just really upset because not only did the coaches not get me checked out by any medical professional, but they allowed me and pressured me into continuing to play the rest of the game. They left me in Jupiter or Stewart without a ride home. And they didn't seem to care that I had gotten hurt. I basically was done for the rest of the season and they didn't seem to care. And I just felt super undervalued on that team, besides the fact that they couldn't care if I live or died, literally. But it was just quite unfortunate because my parents after that were completely done with that sport. They told me, You don't need that energy. Those coaches make you cry, they treat you badly, and now they get you concussed and leave you in a different town. So that's not cool. So my parents pulled me from that one. And it wasn't until senior year when I started playing lacrosse that I learned that coaches are actually supposed to be encouraging, even if you're bad. And Coach Brandon, he's a king, if you ever hear this, but he made me fall in love with sports again. I played lacrosse my senior year. I wasn't that great, but I loved it. I had so much fun, and it was the best experience. It really healed the athletic part of me that got destroyed when I was being coached by the flag frat, because they were so intense and it was never fun, and lacrosse was so much fun. So Coach Brandon is a king if he's ever seeing this. But anyways, also one more thing I had to add about people who let me down. So I was a 4-year cheerleader at Park Vista as well. And my senior pep rally, we were practicing for like 3 weeks to get ready for this pep rally. And I was going to all these practices, doing all these things while trying to balance everything else. And we get to the last practice before the pep rally, I kid you not, maybe the second to last. And after all this time of learning and practicing and doing these things, the coaches just kind of decided that, no hate, I love the coaches, I get it, but it was also kind of messed up to do to a 17-year-old at the time. So the coaches decide that they're actually just going to pull all the girls who are on the competition team, but who are on the sideline team, even though this is like technically a sideline performance. And they're going to make all the girls who are sideline only do a chicken nugget. It's even worse that it's called the chicken nugget. Do a chicken nugget, which is basically just like a little squat where you crouch down and tuck your head into a ball like a chicken nugget in the back of the auditorium in front of the entire school. And then we were just going to come in and do like one little dance part. And that was it. We weren't even in the stunts. Like, they completely redid the stunts just to take us out. And I get they wanted it to look good, but they were practicing as if we were going to perform at the Met Gala. And it was a high school pep rally. And it was my last high school pep rally as a senior for senior week. So in my mind, it would make more sense that all the seniors participate. But that's just me. No hate, no tea, no shade. I loved cheer and I had great experiences. But things like that and moves like that, power moves like that, where it's like individuals putting their own personal agendas above the needs of the kids they're coaching, that kind of really brought it home for me in my experience at Park Vistas. I just saw a lot of times where adults were supposed to be sticking up for us and defending us and there for us, and instead they were meeting their own personal agendas or working for the big man or going behind our backs to change things. And it just really sucked, because I know it wasn't on purpose and that it was a lot of exterior pressure, and the fact that Mr. Clean ran that place like a dictatorship and probably still does. But it's just frustrating, because as a kid who doesn't have any power and who needs adults to stick up for you, it sucks when you don't have adults who have enough of a backbone to do that and stand up for you and say, hey, this is right, even if it's not perfect. And I think a lot of adults failed me by trying to convince me that I had to be perfect, and it wasn't okay to not be perfect. And I think that was one of the biggest lessons I took away from high school, is that it is okay to not be perfect, and it is okay to do things for you and not for other people and their agendas, because at the end of the day, the only person you're going home to at night is yourself. So you got to be happy with that person. You got to be able to live with that person. At the end of the day, I was the golden girl. I did everything right. I stayed in line. I smiled and nodded when asked things. I showed up early and stayed late and always went the extra mile to make everyone proud. My teachers, admin, mentors, even my peers. And still, I got manipulated. I got left behind. I got blackballed. I got pushed to the back of pep rallies and stranded at football games. And I was told that I couldn't walk at graduation up until the very week of graduation. And honestly, that'll mess with your head. It'll make you want to question everything. It'll make you want to shrink or snap, because there's no room for growth when you feel stuck. What I learned is that doing everything right doesn't guarantee a damn thing when you're working with a broken system. So to all the girls out there who did everything right, tried their best, and showed up every day and still got burned by a flawed system, don't let it make you bitter. Let it make you wiser. Just know that you're not the problem, you're the proof. Proof that even good girls get burned when they can't be controlled. I'll take misunderstood over manipulated any day, because I'd much rather be the girl who speaks up than the girl who disappears. Okay, on to my favorite segment of the podcast, Frankly Speaking, where I give you a little bit of frank advice based on whatever we talked about this week. And I thought long and hard about what I was going to frankly speak to you about today, and I think I got a pretty good one. So, frankly speaking, some people stay in power because no one has the energy or balls to call them out. Luckily for Park Vista, I was exhausted in high school. Luckily for you and me, I had the energy today. Before I was so rudely displaced as SGA president, I used to plan all the spirit weeks and dress-up days, so I thought, why not run it back for one last ride? And this week's theme is a Golden Girl Tell-All, exposing all the snakes in Cobra Country. Let me know what you think about it. But thank you guys for watching the Frankly Flowers podcast. I am so happy if you made it to this point in the podcast. Hopefully you learned something, laughed a little, maybe got some insight out of my struggles, or maybe you just watched it and it was entertaining to you. So either way, I hope you guys will like, subscribe, comment, share this with someone who peaked in high school, or even better, someone who peaked in the high school faculty parking lot, and share this with your friends, guys. I really appreciate you guys watching and supporting, and I can't wait for the next episode of Frankly Flowers, where I will be having my very first guest. Feel free to guess who it's going to be in the comments.